Matt Banham's jokes.
So a few years ago, after a heavy night of drinking with my pals, I woke up with a terrible hangover. I sat at the end of my bed after getting myself ready for the day. I had a lot of things to do that day. I had to meet my brother. I had to run some errands, and then I had to get into the city to do some stuff in town. And so I got myself dressed, and I sat at the end of my bed, and I thought to myself, is this my life? Is this a life? Is this a life? Anyway, so I did a few things that I needed to do around the house, and then I got up, looked out the window, and it was a nice day. It was an autumn day. The sun was shining. Wasn't too hot, wasn't too cold. I lived about 40 minutes away via foot to the city. And I thought to myself, I'm going to walk into town because that'll be a nice change and be like a healthy thing to do to my body after what I did to it last night. So I walked out the door and went along my merry way, walking down the street, walking down several streets towards the city, just having a nice old stroll along. And I'm a pretty gassy guy at the best of times. I've got irritable bowel syndrome, and so after a night on the piss, I tend to have a bit more gas than I usually do, which is a good amount of gas. So along my walk, I was doing several farts, but I thought to myself, that's fine. That's just a little thing to help me on my way. There's a little extra boost from Mother Nature.
Go play!
And so I walked into town happily, just waltzing along, listening to my songs on my MP3 player, and and doing a couple of farts. And so I was about halfway into the city from my house, and I felt a big one coming, and that was exciting because when you've got a big fart coming, it's always a bit of fun to have a big fart and giggle to yourself about how much this is going to stink, but nobody else is around, so it's not really going to affect anybody. So I was just walking along, and then I did the big fart, and then suddenly I stopped. And I collected myself. I didn't collect myself. I stopped and realized that the fart that I'd just done whilst walking into the city was a shit. I'd shit my pants, and it wasn't a fart. It was a shit. It was a big sloppy shit that I'd shat all over the back of my pants, and I freaked out. I was freaking out because I was standing in between, like I was at the midpoint between my house and the city. I was about 26 years old at the time, standing in the middle of standing on the footpath of of a major road, and I'd shat my pants. And I didn't know what I was supposed to do then. I panicked. There was a lot of stuff going through my head. What to do? Should I go onwards to the city and go to some department store and buy some new pants and just continue my day? Or did I need to turn around and go back home and get and just crawl back into my shell, crawl back into my house, and that would be where I was. And so after about 30 seconds of very hard decision, I decided that it would be best for me to turn around and go back home. And so began the longest walk home of my life. Only a 20-minute walk, but it felt longer than I've had to walk home from much further destinations, but this was the longest. Not literally, but but psychologically. And so I began my walk home, walking down a major road, the footpath, cars whizzing past me the whole time. It was a warm day. It was a warm day, and I could feel the shit in my pants getting warmer, swishing around back there, swishing around like Ian Thorpe would to a 25-meter pool. But this wasn't a 25-meter pool. This was a 5-centimeter pool around my crack, and Ian Thorpe would have gone nowhere near there. So we walked. So I walked. I kept on walking, and as I was walking, I started to think about babies and infants that walk around with nappies and they just shit wherever they want, and then they walk around for the rest of the day or till however long their parents take to step in and decide that they've had shit in their pants for long enough for them to go, oh, I'll fix that for you. And how I dreamed of one of my parents or some elder to come along and decide and say to me, you've had shit in your pants for long enough now, Matt. I am here to wipe you down, to change your pants, to put some talcum powder there, to make it all better. I wished for that. It never came. And so I kept on walking, and cars were whizzing by my head, and I kept looking at them. Every now and then a taxi would drive by, and I would look at the taxi and I would think, what if I hailed this taxi? What if I asked this taxi to drive me home because I couldn't walk any further with all this shit in my pants? But then I was trying to think about how exactly I would get into the taxi, because I had basically the back of my jeans and underpants full of shit, and so I wouldn't be able to sit down in the front seat or even on the back seat of the taxi, because as soon as I would sit down, all the shit would just sort of pop out, or like whatever seal was going on, like it wasn't even running down the back of my thighs at this point. It was just swishing around my butt. Whatever seal there was would be broken by me sitting down, and then suddenly I would have shit just spraying everywhere while I'm sitting inside a cab. So I couldn't sit down in the back of the cab, and I thought to myself, maybe I could lie on the back seat of the cab. But then I would have to explain to the cab driver, I need to catch this cab about 3 blocks, or about 5-minute drive to my house, and I need to lie down on the back seat on my front, because if I sit down, shit's gonna go everywhere because I've shat myself. And I'm pretty sure there's not many cab drivers that would actually continue the conversation past me even saying that I wanted to lie down on the back seat, let alone if I said to them, because I've shat myself, I wouldn't be able to get the fare. So having all these thoughts in my head, I knew that I just had to continue my walk. And I kept walking on like a soldier. And it was a hard walk, and as I was walking along, I was thinking back to those babies again, and what they must go through, because they start to cry, and you wonder why they start to cry. Well, maybe you wonder. I wonder why they start to cry when they've shut themselves, and they're just sort of rolling around in their own shit. Well, I found out that day why they start to cry is because when you've shat yourself, and you've got no way of immediately getting it out of your pants, then the shit, especially the shit that I'd done, and probably similar to the shit that babies do, it was quite runny, because it was a hangover poo, and so it was just this liquidy acid that was just floating around in my underpants, and it was attacking my bare naked anus, and I could just feel all this acidic shit just sort of like resting against the soft opening of my butthole. It's quite a sensitive area. I'm sure everybody's touched themselves there. or felt something brush past it. Anyway, once you put sort of acidic grog bog shit up against bouncing around there, it starts to sting. It starts to sting really bad. And so this was stinging like crazy, and it was really hard to walk. And it was warm, and I was sweaty, and I was panicking walking down the street. And there's like shit in between my ass cheeks, and it's stinging my anus. And I was tired and hungover, and I admit I started to cry. I started to think to myself, what am I doing with my life? I'd had this thought earlier this day, sitting on the bed, and then it all came crashing back to me. I'm 26 years old. I've shat my pants. I'm walking down a main street in my town, and how can life get any worse than this? And I cried, and I cried, and I walked, and I cried, and I walked, and I just kept going, persevering through all the pain. And it was like hero shit. Anyway, so I eventually got home. I burst through my door. I ran into the bathroom, pulled off my pants, threw away the underpants straight away. Out of some kind of miracle, all of the shit that I'd done had just been secured in my underpants. I don't know how, but none of it had gotten through to my jeans. Let there not be said that I didn't wash my jeans, but I didn't have to throw the jeans away. The underpants had to be thrown away, but the jeans were safe. So I obviously gave them a good wash, not right away. Jumped into the shower, cried, washed myself, and just thought back to everything that I'd just gone through. Thought about how maybe it would have made me a better man. And and then just got over it and became stronger for it. About a year later, I was lifting up something quite heavy, and as I lifted it up, I shat myself again, but this time it wasn't so bad because I'd been there before, and I was used to it.
Matt Banham's jokes.